Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to you, Buddha, hero, Buddha Vira Namo Tiatu, best of all beings, Sabbasatta Namuttama, who released me and many others, Yo Mam Dukkha Pamochesi, from suffering, Anyancha Bahukang Janang. All suffering is fully understood. Sabbadukkang Parinyatang, craving, its cause, has been made to wither. He tutanha visosita, the eightfold path has been developed. Bhavito attangiko maggo, and I have attained cessation. Nirodho pusito maya. Dear friends, that was a part of Mahāpajāpatī Gotami's declaration. So I read that to introduce her. I'm introducing with pleasure Venerable Ayya Soma Bhikkhuni, who is our special guest today. And I am Ayya Sobhana. Let's just sit together for just a few minutes of meditation to settle down and arrive in the space. We can be quiet for, say, just 5 minutes, just to arrive. Ayya, Soma, shall I yammer on for a while and you respond to me, or vice versa?
First and foremost, Namo Buddhaya, Venerable Sobhana. Thank you so much for inviting me today, and I'm very happy to follow along as you wish under your leadership.
Well, I'm just going to say a little bit to demonstrate the theme that I want to develop today. Since this morning, we've heard from several different angles the touching and heartwarming aspect of Mahāpajāpati's life and her significance to the Sangha, and the importance to us of her courage, her success, and her example. We had a talk this morning with Ayya Shakya Dhammadinna from India, who recounted especially a major portion of the story that's given in Mahāpajāpati's Apadana verses. And Ayya Dhammadinna, being a bhikkhuni in India, there's not very many Theravada bhikkhunis in India, considering the vast size of that nation. And even fewer opportunities for them to be supported to practice at a high level and to get a really great education and support in the monastic form. So when she speaks of the hardship and challenges that were experienced by the early bhikkhunis, in a way, my heart was feeling also that today that those Indian Theravada bhikkhunis face a lot of those same kinds of challenges at a very strong level. As you may know, this community, Dhammadharini, has made the effort to invite international bhikkhunis to come and visit us from time to time, so that they can have, to whatever extent that we have a good community with a good leadership and good support. We're happy to share that. And we're also very happy for our friends in the community here in USA to meet the Sangha from around the world. So we're hopeful. I'm not sure when it's going to be, if it will be this year or a future year, that Ayya Dhammadinna will come to us and be teaching. Then Ayya Dhammanusari from Canada, with a family background from Cambodia, joined us together with our own Venerable Kaccayana, and they looked at the video from the revival of interest in the ancient mound where Mahāpajāpati's remains were first kept. So the stupa, or the chaitya of Mahāpajāpatī, which has been completely neglected for many hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. But now it's been discovered and verified, and it's coming to the awareness of the world. I wanted today to introduce comparing the Apadana verses, which are more legendary, with the Therigatha verses, the Therigatha verses were translated. There have been several translations, but one of the translations has been done by Ayya Soma, and I will be putting up a screenshot so that you can see how to get a hold of her translation. The Therigatha verses have got this quality of the most amazing, direct, realistic, and often very concise portrait of what the actual life was like for these ancient women, combined with very lovely, straightforward statements about the significance of their awakening and the significance of the teaching. So there's contained within it some poems that are so they're almost like haiku. They're so concise. I'm going to read one. This is Mettika Teri. I was in pain, weak, and long past my youth. But leaning on a stick, I climbed the mountain. I laid down the outer robe and overturned the bowl. Sitting down on a stone, in that moment, my mind was liberated. I obtained the three knowledges and completed the teaching of the Buddha. She also has an Abhidhamma. This is the legendary rendition. I had a stupa constructed for Siddhartha, the Blessed One. This would be one of the previous Buddhas, eons ago. I gifted my jeweled waist ornaments so the teacher could be repaired, meaning so the stupa could be repaired. So at that time, the stupa was considered as a stand-in for the teacher. When that great stupa was finished, I gave another ornament for the sage, the guide of the world, feeling well pleased by my own hands. In the 94 aeons since, I gave that waist ornament then. I've come to know no bad rebirth. That's the fruit of building stupas. That if my defilements are now burnt up, all new existence is destroyed. Like elephants with broken chains, I live without constraint. Being in the best Buddha's presence was a very good thing for me. The three knowledges are attained. I have done what the Buddha taught. The 4 analytical modes and 8 deliverances, 6 special knowledges, all mastered. I have done what the Buddha taught. This is a very, within the context of the Abhidhamma, this is very brief. Some of the other famous Bhikkhunis have got stories of the past lifetimes, saying how billions of times they served, billions of times they gave robes, billions of times they offered food, billions of times they offered lodgings, billions of times they gave and gave and gave their generosity without any limit, and then the fruit of that. It's all a different, a completely different realm of the story. We may have some conversation a little bit later about how to hold these stories, which are not really that sympathetic for many modern people, but which are in a very real way expressing the vastness of time and when we consider the significance of the round of samsara, to go have life going on from birth to birth to birth to birth for the endless, beginningless amount of time. Sometimes in our conversations that we've had here with our little group, when people feel remorse or difficulty with the afflictions that come up for them, or with how to overcome their bad habits, we've sometimes mentioned that, well, in past lifetimes, we must have killed many millions of times before we were, possibly in the past as humans, if we were kings or warriors, and possibly in the past if we were animals, having a dog-eat-dog world where in order to live you have to kill, and what the whole dukkha of all of that is, that's like inherited and like in some kind of way like held within our body as the comic result of that. And then remembering how with the arising of the Dhamma, with wisdom, that all of that structure of all that habitual momentum can be just cut off. But in the Apadana stories, it's a different memory. The memory is of having done good, having been kind, having been generous, having done good in the past. The Bodhisattva's wife, Yasodhara, in one of her past lives, was a slave woman who was the chief of all the slave women. So there were like 500 slave women, and she was the chief. There came to be a group of 5 Pacceka Buddhas, 5 silent Buddhas, who came begging for alms food, and the official, the gatekeeper outside the palace, turned them away and didn't want to give them anything. But Yasodhara called a meeting of the her other companions, and they decided to help these Pacceka Buddhas, and they invited them to stay for the 3 months of the Vasa. And they got some guys to build 4 grass huts, and they brought the food, and they fed those 4 Buddhas and took care of them for the entire 3 months of that Vasa. And this is one of the many countless acts of goodness and kindness and devotion that Yasodhara had in her past karmic stream, which had the result not only in her awakening, but also her having tremendous powers. Later at another time, she had a display of her powers where she, the northern part of India became her head, and the central part of India became her body, and eastern and western part of India became her 2 wings. And so she covered the entire continent of India, was covered by the body of Yasodhara in one of her previous births. So it's all kind of like fantastic. And yet, when we come to the Therigatha, we say, I was old, I was in pain, yet I took my stick and I climbed the mountain. I turned over my bowl. I spread out my cloth. I sat. I sat on a stone, and I was awakened. So would you like to say a bit about how it was for you in translating the Therigatha, and perhaps mention some of your favorite verses?
Thank you so much, Venerable, for all your sharings and reflections and the invitation. Yes, as you've mentioned, it's very beautiful to have these verses of the elders. So it's been really inspiring for me to get in touch with the actual verses of the enlightened women of the past. I have to say that during the translation, something that really made an impact in my mind was actually also having to face my sort of assumptions of how it was to be a woman in ancient India. And so there was a lot of surprise sometimes here and there to actually hear the voices of the women talking about themselves in a way that perhaps I was not expecting. So usually these days we emphasize a lot the sort of struggles perhaps of 2,500 years ago in ancient India, and also the sort of maybe less than ideal condition of women in ancient India. But when I was translating the verses, I remember being very surprised, for example, that Sundari actually, before taking the form of a bhikkhuni, before going forth, actually, she receives the inheritance from her father, who had also decided to go forth. And that just an example that struck me. I thought, oh, wow, actually women, for example, could inherit money. Women could actually, have a sort of economical independence, which even in the UK, wasn't the case until last century. So I was very much struck, like all of these sort of even material elements made me question my assumptions. What I started noticing was the variety of the stories of the elders in their own words, where they're coming from. So both their social status, both the castes, so whether one was rich or poor, it didn't really matter, or also the ages, whether one was in old age or very young, whether someone was married, had children, or whether one didn't have sort of family situation. There are so many different, the variety, I guess, of the background of the stories of the Theris throughout the Therigatha. There's so much difference and so many, basically wherever we are in our lives, we can find someone with whom we can identify. And also the teachings of the Buddha, where he says at a certain point in the Majjhima Nikaya, and actually in other places as well, he is reported to highlight why he actually talks about the rebirth, where his disciples end, right? And also their attainments, and whether they are sotapannas all the way to arahants, and if they are his bhikkhu disciples or bhikkhuni disciples, or lay women disciples or laymen disciples. And he says something along the lines that he shares all this information not for praise, honor, gain, not for any sort of particular celebratory reason, but rather so that someone just like them, someone who is a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni or a layman or a laywoman who is putting effort in developing these wholesome mind states, can gain some inspiration. And so in that way, I started relating to the Therigatha after translating it in a different way of really going, wow, these are, I don't think they are here by chance, all these different stories, these different backgrounds, these different shapes and forms of awakening. But rather it's to really tell us, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you are young or if you're old. It doesn't matter if you're rich or if you're poor. It doesn't matter if you're educated or if you're not educated. It doesn't matter where you are, but essentially you can put effort, and you can, each one of us has the opportunities to attain awakening. And especially in these days, 2,500 years after the Buddha, there's so many different stereotypes on women in particular, so many assumptions, so many ideas that it's bad karma to be born a woman. And so lots of women, and not only in the East, but also in the West, and myself included, when I actually started practicing, actually as a bhikkhuni, I was exposed to a lot of different stereotypes on women and a lot of different ideas on what my possibilities were in this life due to my body. So they can be very insidious, and they can become huge obstacles in one's life. And the thought of maybe I'll wait next life and make merit, and perhaps actually then go a little bit more towards the Apadana story than the sort of Therigatha story that is presented to us, can very much be present and very much appear. At least that was my personal story. So the translation of the Therigatha actually really was very helpful to, I think, get me on the right track of really put effort in here where I am, with all the limitations and also all the good things that have been done in the past, all the good sort of vipaka of good karma made in the past, to really give it a shot that actually enlightenment is possible, while at the same time also making punya. So being inspired by the Apadana stories. So whenever we are practicing ourselves, and we trying to make conditions for others, we're also making a lot of punya. So we're benefiting, we're making progress in the path, and at the same time also helping others like us making progress in the path. And obviously the Dhammanusari Sangha is I would say, sort of epitome of this, the incredible work that all of you elders have done to make it possible for people like me to go forth, make it possible for me to have role models in this life, make, my sort of Therigatha of, my contemporary Therigatha of so many different bhikkhunis that I can look up to, and that are also making conditions possible for everyone. It doesn't matter if one is in California necessarily, but also in Italy. Right now I'm in Italy traveling, and here I am connecting with my other sisters here. So yeah, I have to say that once again, the Therigatha has been very important for me to get my sort of mind and heart back on track towards awakening. But also at the same time, seeing in the verses, the ones that you actually read of Mahāpajāpatī at the very beginning of our meeting, they're some of my favorite verses. And in particular, I love actually the part where Mahāpajāpatī Gotami says, "In the past, I was a mother, a child, a father, a brother, and a grandmother. blind to the truth, I returned again and again, never finding in the darkness what I sought. So this also key point of we've been everything in the past. And that also includes having a different body, having different genders, having different roles in society. And then ultimately, all of this is to be transcended. And of course, the verses of the elder Soma, Bhikkhunī Soma, that I have the name, I'm very honored to have her name, where she is approached by Mara, and Mara, actually starts giving her, sharing some stereotypes on gender and how, being a woman would have been an obstacle for her awakening. And in the end, she replies that whoever thinks I'm a woman, I'm a man, or I'm anything at all is fit for Mara to be addressed. So this last verse is actually in the Bhikkhunī Sangha. But before that, in the verses that are shared in the Therigatha and the Bhikkhunī Sangha are about what does it matter, what does womanhood even mean when the mind is in samadhi, when the mind is concentrated and sees right through the Dhamma, right? So then in the end, what I find really beautiful was the message of transcending every single identity. But sometimes we're very quick to do that type of work. Obviously, the Theris were fully enlightened. And so sometimes also, this teaching has been very good to both understand that we need to transcend these identities, but also understand that we need to understand these identities to begin with. So all of these examples have been very, very important for me to actually also understand what is womanhood. Yes, womanhood has nothing to do with enlightenment, but I also need to understand this state. I need to understand what it is to have this body in this world, understand sort of the nuts and bolts of also the thoughts that can appear in this mind when people relate to us in a particular way, and understand also the impersonality of those thoughts. And whenever we understand the impersonality of those thoughts, then it's easier not to hang on to them and let them go. So these are some reflections.
Thank you so much. I put in the chat the link to a couple of the versions that you could get Ayya Soma's translation. And just for a second, I'll share the screen and show you what it looks like. So this is an announcement in that happened to come up in one of my favorite websites. The website's called Reading Faithfully. When I searched for Therigatha Ayya Soma, it came up to this announcement. It's also published with Sutta Central, so you can find it in Sutta Central. To me, it's the Sutta Central website is sometimes very cumbersome. It's nice to have a physical book to read, or else it's nice to just download a book so that you can just kind of read it through without having to click it and wait for the internet each time you want to turn the page. So it's the verses of the Elder Bhikkhunis in Pali and English, a translation of the Therigatha by Bhikkhunī Sangha, published for Sutta Central. I think what I'd like to do now is to read off some more verses from Mahāpajāpati's Therigatha. And we'll have time to read some of the sections from her Apadana as well. Yes, in the past I was a mother, a child, a father, a brother, and a grandmother, blind to the truth. I returned again and again, never finding in the darkness what I sought. I have seen the Bhagavan. Indeed, this is my last body. Destroyed is rebirth in samsara. Now there is no coming back to any state of being. See the disciples on the path, established in energy, self-directed, always making a sincere effort. This is paying homage to the Buddhas. Those who are members of the class know that I've been saying this over and over again, that this is Patipati Puja. If you want to respect the Buddha, then practice. That's the way to pay homage. Indeed, for the benefit of many beings, Maya gave birth to Gotama. Sickness, death, and the mass of suffering are vanquished. Coming down into the Apadana. Now, this is largely spoken just before her Parinibbana. You should remember that she's now 120 years old and has been serving and helping her disciples for 40 years since they're going forth as bhikkhunis. The teacher's been worshipped by me. I have done what the Buddha taught. The heavy load has been laid down, the ties to existence removed. The reason for which I went forth from my home into homelessness, I have now achieved that purpose. Destruction of all the fetters. While Buddha and his great teaching are still around, nothing lacking. That's the time for my nirvana. Do not grieve about me, children. Kondanya, Ananda, Nanda, Rahula, the victor remain. These are the young bhikkhu disciples, younger bhikkhu disciples who will live on after her Parinibbana. The assembly is cheerful and close. The conceit of rivals is slain. The famed one is exalted, the death crusher. Children, isn't it about time for me to achieve nirvana? My wish I've had for very long is finally fulfilled today. This is the time for drums of joy. What then with all these tears, children? If you feel compassion for me, and if you all appreciate this great teacher's teachings, stability, then strong and fervent you should be. Beseeched by me, the Sambuddha gave ordination to women. Therefore, as I have shown myself, you all should follow after him. Having thus advised those women, placed in front by the Buddha's nuns, going up and worshiping the Buddha, she said this to him. This is Gotamī speaking to her son, the Buddha. Well gone one, I am your mother, and you are my father. Hero, Lord, who gives the good teachings joy, O Gotama, I'm born from you. Your body made from flesh and bones was reared up by me, well gone one. My flawless body made of truth was reared up by you. I suckled you with mother's milk, which quenches thirst for a moment. From you, I drank the milk of truth, peaceful without interruption. Great sage, you owe no debt to me for protecting and rearing you. To obtain such a son is what women desiring sons desire. Mothers of worldly kings like Mandhata are sunk into the existence sea. O son, through you I've crossed over life, this ocean of becoming. Women can easily obtain the name King's Mother or Chief Queen, but the name Mother of the Buddha is the hardest name to obtain. O hero, I've obtained that name. I got my wish because of you. Having abandoned this body, I want to reach full nirvana. Give me permission, O hero. O disease ender, O leader. And then she says, I beg you over and again for ordination of women. If I was in error in that, forgive it, O bull among men. O hero, with your permission, I instructed the Buddhist nuns. If I gave bad advice in that, forgive it, Lord of forgiveness. And the Buddha replied, what's not forgiven to forgive in one who's ordained with virtue? What more am I to say to you when you're going to nirvana? Those who are desiring escape from the world in my pure and complete assembly of monks are like the fading crescent moon at daybreak, after having seen the ruin of its grasps. Like the stars and moon around the Mount Meru, all the other nuns circumambulated the Buddha, the chief victor, and after bowing at his feet, they stood gazing at him. Then the pious one, this Gotamī, explained her thoughts to the assembly of monks, and having worshipped Rahula, Ananda, and Nanda. So Rahula was the Buddha's son. Nanda was her own birth son and the Buddha's cousin. And the Buddha was her foster son. And then Ananda was another one of the Buddha's cousins. So as a younger woman, these would have been the children that she cared for when she was the mother and the aunt. So speaking to them now, she said, I'm weary of my body. Similar to a serpent's den, a sickness house, a heap of disease, pasturing in old age and death, covered with varied flaws and drool, dependent on others, actionless. Therefore, I desire nirvana. Give me your permission, children. Nanda and fortunate Rahula, who were griefless, without constraint, wise and unshakingly steadfast, reflected on the way things are. Woe and greed for conditioned things, as worthless as banana wood, same as a deluded mirage, fleeting and constantly changing. In flux are all conditioned things. In so far as the victor's aunt, the one who suckled the Buddha, Gotamī, goes without a trace. However, Ananda still had not obtained his full awakening. He was then still training, fond of the Buddha, but still sad, beseeching her there, shedding tears. He was wailing piteously. Gotamī is going, smiling. Surely then soon the Buddha too will be going to nirvana, like a fire whose fuel has run out. Gotamī said to Ananda, who was lamenting in this way, O son, keen on serving Buddha, your wisdom's deep as is the sea, and so you really should not mourn when the time for smiling has come. Son, through your assistance to me, I have realized nirvana. This is referring to the occasion when Gotamī and the 500 ladies requested the ordination, and the Buddha rejected them. Then he rejected them a second time. They were standing outside where the Buddha was staying, dusty from their travels and depressed. Ananda asked them what was happening. And then Ananda went as their advocate and spoke on their behalf, reminding the Buddha that they had the potential for their full enlightenment. And then the Buddha accepted. We don't think that this is because the Buddha was indecisive or they needed to twist his arm or he gave in to pressure. But instead, we see on several occasions in the, you could say in the mythology or the folk tale of the Buddha, that they have to ask him 3 times. So at various key moments of the Buddha's life, he was asked 3 times to teach the Dhamma to people. And then near the end of his life, Mara came and asked him 3 times to give up the life and to go to his final nirvana. And here, on this occasion, Ananda asked 3 times. Being requested by you, dear, the Buddha gave us ordination. Therefore, do not be distressed, son. Your effort is now bearing fruit. That state, unseen by the ancients, likewise by rival teachers, is known by Buddhist young maidens when they're only 7 years old. So take your final look at me, preserver of the Buddha's word. Son, I'm going to that place where one who's gone cannot be seen. My defilements are now burnt up. All new existence is destroyed. Like elephants with broken chains, I am living without constraint. Being in best Buddha's presence was a very good thing for me. The 3 knowledges are attained. I have done what the Buddha taught. The 4 analytical modes and these 8 deliverances, 6 special knowledges mastered. I have done what the Buddha taught. Then the Buddha said, there are fools who doubt that women too attain Dhamma penetration. To dispel that wrong view of theirs, display miracles, Gotamī. Then, bowing to the Sambuddha and rising up into the sky, with Buddha's assent, Gotamī displayed various miracles. Being alone, she was cloned, and being cloned again alone. Appearing and disappearing, she walked through walls, walked through the sky. She traveled unattached to earth. She also sank down into it. She walked on water as on land, leaving its surface unbroken. Crossed legs, she flew like a bird across the surface of the sky. With her body, she took control of space, right up to Brahma's home. Taking Mount Meru in her hand, she made the great earth her umbrella. Carrying, twirling root and all, she walked back and forth in the sky. And like the time when 6 suns rose, she caused the entire world to smoke and fume. As though it were at the end of time, she garlanded the earth in flames. She took Mount Meru, Mount Mandara, Mount Dandara, the great Mujilinda, all of them in a single fist like they were tiny mustard seeds. She concealed with her fingertip the makers of both day and night. as though 1,000 suns and moons were a necklace she was wearing. In a single hand, she held the water of the 4 great oceans. She rained forth a torrential rain like an apocalyptic cloud. She made appear up in the sky a wheel turner with retinue. She showed Vishnu as the boar and roaring lion and Garuda. Being alone, she conjured up a boundless group of Buddhist nuns, making them disappear again alone. She said this to the sage: "Your mother's sister, great hero, is one who's done what you have taught, an attainer of her own goal. She worships your feet, O eyeful one." Having shown various miracles descending from up in the sky, worshiping the lamp of the world, she sat down off to one side. "Great sage, I'm an old woman, 120 years from birth. That much is enough, O hero. I'm reaching nirvana leader." So that's just a portion of this fantastic poem. What to say? Those who have been able to touch the noble path know the awesomeness of that experience being something so different from our ordinary way of experiencing things. And it can be that in this poetry, the description of these tremendous manifestation of these miracles is just trying to give a scintilla of the feeling of how awesome the Parinibbana, the final nirvana, would be. How awesome awakening is. How when we transcend the fetter that keeps our mind always attached to some base, some state of existence, when that fetter breaks and we break free from that, how fantastic, how completely different from our ordinary way of perceiving reality. So this, to me, is, I think, the reason why this description of miracles, it's not like a magic show because we want to convince somebody that the teaching is real, but rather just a way of expressing the greatness of awakening. I think I'd like to pause now and see whether Soma or anybody else in the room would like to offer comments or questions. And we may have time to squeeze in some other verses if there's any other particular poems from the Therigatha that you'd like to read later on. But let's see if there's any comments or questions from our listeners right now. Okay, Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. As far as broadly speaking, women's capabilities are concerned, I just wanted to point out that, we know that the Buddha's first 5 friends, the 5 ascetics, attained Sotapan and then Arahantship. And then he met a individual, sort of like a nobleman or a wealthy person, Yasa. And Yasa, in one conversation with the Buddha, attained Sotapan, just as Kundana had in the first teaching that the Buddha gave. And then Yasa's father came along searching for him. And in one conversation, he achieved Sotapan. And in that conversation, Yasa, listening to that second conversation, achieved Arahat. And then they were invited to Yasa's father's home for the meal, the Buddha and Yasa. And in one conversation, his mother and his sister achieved Sotapan. So, you know, it shows that the mind is the same. Given the opportunity, the mind is the same in all beings. You know, that this temporary bodily condition really doesn't have anything to do with anything, really. You know, if you're willing to let go of those type of concepts and ideas. And so, you know, so we can see right from the very beginning, you know, that women had the ability and the potential, you know, to go and start the process of freeing themselves from samsara. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. There's also the way that while we are trapped in the particularity of our condition, whatever that condition may be, it's like we get into these painful dilemmas, and then the goodness and the great quality of the Dhamma taught by the Buddha is because it's so powerful in opening and breaking up those dilemmas and healing those dilemmas. So, for example, Ananda being grieved and worried because he was anticipating the being separated from the Buddha. That's because he was still not yet fully enlightened, that it appeared to him as such a tremendous loss. And then, you know, the Buddha, with such kindness, taught him, don't worry, soon you will be enlightened. And didn't I teach you that everything that arises must cease? He said, you are the light, rely on yourself. Don't rely on anything but yourself. Rely on the Dhamma, don't rely on anything but the Dhamma. And so he was able to, you know, give the teaching that enabled Ananda to have the capacity to come out of being traumatized and grieved by that loss and separation. And then, you know, there are many other kinds of dilemmas that people may face depending on how they're situated. And this is the universal medicine. And we can see how powerful it is when we see how effectively it cures so many difficult situations. It may cure the arrogance of somebody who is wealthy and privileged, and it may cure the traumatic grief almost to insanity of somebody who's lost their spouse and children. All of those particular, you know, like the actual earthiness of those dilemmas, which is very much bound up in the status and the differences and who's high and who's low and all those things. And so there's a way that contrast helps us to appreciate and understand the power and the goodness of this Dhamma. I'm not disputing how important Richard's insight is and how significant and meaningful it is when people hold that with clarity, and how beneficial it is when people hold that understanding with clarity, that these distinctions don't really mean a thing. I think there may be some people at the Aranyabodhi. Would you be like to come in and say a couple of words? Our hermitage suffers a lot from bad internet.
Ayya.
Yes.
I don't know if this will work. We have not good internet and loud rain, but we can give it a try.
Okay, there they are.
It's very dark. Yeah, I'm just emerging from my own secluded retreat time and just really appreciating the day-to-day and the conversations, and yeah, just we have the incredible benefit of the lives of Mahāpajāpatī and these other women and everyone who came after them, and the fact that their willingness to go forth and do everything that they did has set up the conditions for us to be able to be here now. And it's just an amazing thing. So appreciating them and the opportunity to remember and honor them today.
Thank you. Any other questions about? Yes, you may.
Mhm.
First part of what you read about her saying, I was a mother, a brother, etc., etc. It's important that we recognize that there may be people who don't believe in rebirth, and they may think that this is all there is, because Western religions and culture do not teach about that. Yet the Vedas and the Upanishads, which are all ancient, so the Vedas and Upanishads, they're some of the most ancient documents on the planet, and they talk about these things. The Buddha grew up in a Hindu home with some of the best sages teaching him. And all that to say, the Eastern culture has gods and goddesses, and they are equal. But the Western culture does not have those models. And so I think the human creation of society also created the value of men and women. And in every culture, there are women who are equal to men and recognized as such. They inherit properties from their fathers and their families and all of that, and they're equal to sons. But in every culture, there's also the flip side, where socioeconomic status and birthright and generational birth have an influence on how males and females are treated. Just to say that the universe is diverse, everything is diverse. When we look at this body, this body is nothing but element. And I think when we sit in the most difficult situation in our life, it would behoove us to remember the basics of the Buddha's teaching, because none of it means anything significant. It's our understanding of the human process as he teaches us, which can end our suffering and our attachment to everything in the physical world. So thank you for sharing her conversation with the Buddha. It's just the most spectacular teaching about the Buddha recognizing that gender has no role to play in awakening and enlightenment. So thank you very, very much for that.
Okay. Ayya, Soma, would you like to read or recite for us some more verses from the Therigatha from some of the other characters that are inspiring?
Sure, thank you, Venerable Sobhana. Maybe I will read from Ubiri. So this one is the Therigatha 3.4. And so the Buddha says, you cry in the forest for Jiva. Ubiri, come to your senses. 84,000 beings, all with the name Jiva, were burnt in that cremation ground. You sorrowed over all of them in the same way. And Ubiri replies, alas, you pulled out the thorn, difficult to see, stuck in my heart. Losing my daughter filled me with grief, but now that grief is gone. Today the thorn has been pulled out. I am free from craving, fully quenched. I go to the sage for refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. I very much love this these verses from Ubiri, and actually also of the Buddha. Like, I love this teaching, and that records the moment of awakening of Ubiri, that frees her from the freedom from suffering. And also, I find it very interesting because she's in the form of actually a laywoman when she attains awakening. And then as soon as she attains awakening, she becomes a bhikkhuni. We actually have two cases of lay women attaining awakening actually in the Therigatha. This is one of them, Ubiri, and the other one is Sujata. And as soon as they attain awakening, Sujata actually has a different story. Ubiri is a little bit more, obviously her entry point is this incredible pain of losing a child, losing her daughter. And obviously going through atrocious dukkha. But Sujata's story, on the other hand, actually is completely the opposite. So she is a very wealthy woman who is just going about her day, having fun, playing in the park. And then at a certain point, she hears that the Buddha is around. So she wants to go and see him. Maybe she was a little bit bored out of all her sensual pleasures, of enjoying sensual pleasures. And then as soon as she meets the Buddha, she attains awakening in that moment. And then similarly to Ubiri, she takes the form of a bhikkhuni. So I find it very interesting because oftentimes, we in Buddhist circles, there's obviously the stereotype that we heard before of well, women have a harder time attaining awakening, or et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes actually we hear the opposite. There is no problem in attaining awakening for either men or women, right? It's not the body that gets enlightened. But then there's this other pernicious idea of, well, actually, one does not need to be a bhikkhuni to doesn't need bhikkhuni ordination in order to attain awakening. This is accessible for lay people as well. And I would say that the Therigatha says the same thing. Yes, it's true. Yes, it's absolutely not 100% necessary to attain awakening in the form of the bhikkhuni. But I feel it's also very interesting to see that the majority of the stories of Theris actually attained awakening as bhikkhunis. So we have only 2 stories of lay women who then actually end up as bhikkhunis. So what comes to mind is also the importance of this form, which sometimes, once again, it's highlighted the lay path, and that it is true that in Buddhism, obviously, actually there are many suttas where the Buddha says as much, that it wouldn't be, a full path. He wouldn't have taught like an actual complete holy path if it wasn't accessible for both bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, laymen and laywomen, right? And so it's important to say that, yes, absolutely, it's not 100% necessary, but obviously taking this form of renunciation is incredibly useful for the attainment of awakening, which is why the majority of the stories in the Therigatha are stories of awakening of bhikkhunis. Lots of times these days, I think we also forget what actually a bhikkhu and a bhikkhuni is, that it's not a sort of ecclesiastical role. I'm in Italy, so the land of the Vatican. So lots of people actually ask me. So even my friends, when I took higher ordination, they were like, "Oh, so you have, more status, more power?" I was like, "Oh, no, I have more precepts, more renunciation." They were quite shocked. And so this, the original form, I feel that the Buddha has gifted us is a form of extreme renunciation, of a beggar, of a homeless person. And all of these beautiful precepts enable us to actually really see the Dhamma. And I feel always perplexed when I actually hear so many obstructions that there can be for the attainment of ordination of women, especially in these days, of climate change, of overconsumption, of all of the problems that we face, that we've always faced, but in particular in this time and day. And so when we actually really think this form is a form of renunciation, don't we need more renunciants in the world? Don't we need actually more conditions for anyone to let go of things, to let go of this incessant craving, of this incessant tanha? So these are a few considerations, a few thoughts that came to mind, while also acknowledging the fact that, being a lay woman does not prevent awakening.
For myself, I find that speaking about the Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma is one of the most fruitful types of practice. They say that Kalena Dhamma Sakacha Eta Mangala Suttamang. So to have a conversation about the Dhamma at the right time is the supreme blessing. So I'd like to read one of the poems where the Bhikkhuni is giving a little bit more substantial Dhamma teaching in giving the poem. This is Subha, the daughter of the blacksmith. Okay, I'll just read it. I was young and pure when I heard the Dhamma. I understood the truth through heedfulness. Then all sensual pleasures stopped being so appealing. I saw the danger in self-identity and longed for renunciation. I left behind relatives, workers and servants, and prosperous village fields, pleasing and delightful. I gave up much wealth for the sake of going forth. Now that I have left the household life out of faith in the well-spoken, true Dhamma, it wouldn't be proper for one who aspires to nothingness to revert to gold and silver after casting them away. Silver and gold do not bring enlightenment nor peace. They are not proper for a contemplative. This isn't noble wealth. It's just greed and intoxication, delusion and increase of impurity. It is unreliable, troublesome, and short-lived. Human beings with defiled minds pursue it, heedless and lustful. They get into numerous quarrels, pitting themselves against each other. One can see those entangled in sensual pleasures, afflicted with much misfortune, ruin, imprisonment, hardship, loss, grief, and lamentation. Treacherous relatives, why do you try to trap me in sensual pleasures? You know I have gone forth after seeing the danger in sensual pleasures. Neither gold nor money will eliminate the influences of mind. Sensual pleasures are murderous enemies, foes, darts, fetters. Treacherous relatives, why do you try to trap me in sensual pleasures? You know I have gone forth with a shaven head, wrapped in the outer robe, collecting lumps of leftover food and robes made from discarded rags. These are the supports for the homeless life. This is what is proper for me. The great sages have spewed out sensual pleasures, both divine and human. They are in a safe place. They are liberated. They have reached unshakable happiness. I should not get involved with sensual pleasures where safety is not found. Sensual pleasures are deadly enemies. They are like a great mass of fire. They are suffering. Greed is hazardous, frightful, pestering, troublesome. It is the opposite of peace and the way into much delusion. Sensual pleasures are like the head of a snake, dangerous and dire. Foolish, blind worldlings delight in them. Indeed, there are many foolish beings in the world trapped in the mud of sensual pleasures who do not know the end of birth and death. Because of sensual pleasures, humans are on the path that leads to a bad destination. Many decide to follow it, bringing illness to themselves. By producing enmity, torment, and complete defilement, sensual pleasures are entrapping the world's bait that binds us to death. Maddening, enticing, sensual pleasures crush the mind. They are a trap set by Mara for the defilement of sentient beings. Sensual pleasures have endless drawbacks, cause much suffering, and are highly poisonous. They bring little enjoyment. They produce conflict, causing one's bright, wholesome traits to wither away. I will not go back to sensual pleasures which have caused me so much misery. Now I always enjoy nirvana. When I was battling with sensual pleasures, I longed for a state of coolness. Now I dwell heedful in the destruction of all fetters. Free from sorrow, stainless, safe, I follow the upright, noble eightfold path, the one because of which the great sage crossed over. You see this person established in Dhamma. Subha, the daughter of the blacksmith, having become free from passion, she meditates at the root of a tree. Today is the 8th day since her going forth, faith shining in the true Dhamma, trained by Upalavarna, possessing the 3 knowledges, leaving behind death. A free person with no debt, a bhikkhuni with well-developed spiritual powers, with all bonds unbound. She is one who has done what was to be done and is free from influence. Then Sakha, using psychic powers, approached her in the assembly of devas, and the Lord of Beings paid homage to Subha, the daughter of the blacksmith. And the poignancy of this powerful Dhamma teaching is because of the moment where Subha is in the presence of her family members who have not seen the way out of the mud of sensual greed, and are trying to pull her back because they do not understand. They have not yet gotten it. And so, using the power of the well-spoken words and the many similes and the beauty of the poetry, and also perhaps using the love and affection that the family have for her, that then, sometimes like there's something that can happen in a person's life where the door opens for a minute and you're ready to listen, or you're able to hear it for a minute where you weren't able before. This is the power of the Buddha, was to be able to see somebody who would be able to understand, to hear the words. And just this longer poem makes me feel that perhaps it was a moment when those relatives would have been able to hear, would have been able to understand, would have been able to see the transformation in Subha from one who was troubled and quarrelsome and vain and everything else, into one who was completely at peace, one for whom the rag robes and the lumps of leftover food were just as good as the finest clothing and food that money could buy. There was a question for Venerable Soma, came in the chat. They were wondering, Shah was wondering, what inspired you to take on this translation task of this particular text?
Thank you, Shah, for your question. Well, it's actually very much connected to what we've been talking about since the very beginning. So all the pernicious ideas that we can encounter along the path when we have a female body. So at a certain point, once I kept on hearing that it was, bad karma to be a woman, and that there were obstacles for women along the path, it kind of actually became a little bit of a matter of life or death as a monastic for me. So I needed to understand what exactly were the teachings of the Buddha in terms of sex, in terms of gender, and what were actually the experiences of women who had practiced, at the time of the Buddha. So what did they have to say? And at the same time, I was also studying Pali. So I kind of combined all of this together. And actually back then I thought, well, also it's pretty great because the Therigatha is not really that long. So it can be like it's a sort of easy Pali project, but I didn't realize that actually Pali poetry is significantly more complex than than Pali prose, so it was a bigger endeavor than I thought. But yeah, it has been beautiful once again to really understand the Dhamma thanks to the Theris, thanks to their testimony of the past, and actually translating each one of their verses and then editing it really kind of was a full immersion in this matter, in this question. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, it was yeah, well, it definitely inspired me to stay in the robes and actually made me understand even better the reason why we are, why we take this form, why I took that form at the very beginning, why it's important, why it's a renunciant form, why it's not an ecclesiastical form. I mean, it can be an ecclesiastical form, it can be obviously a sort of clergy form, but the reality is that it's a renunciant form, and that's when we take it in the shape and form that actually Venerable Sobhana, was quoting right now the verses from Suba, from the elder Suba, when we really let go of all the sensual pleasure, when we see actually sensual pleasures of how big of an obstacles they are, then the only way and reason to be in this world is in this form, really, in the super bhikkhuni form. Yeah, that's also why actually I'm creating, currently I'm in Italy, I'm trying to create these conditions also for women in Italy. It's been remarkable in the past years how many times I've heard women come up to me and say, wow, you're the first bhikkhuni that I meet, the Italian bhikkhuni. I didn't even know there were bhikkhunis. I was told that I could practice as a layperson, but that this form wasn't available for me. And I keep on meeting actually countless women that have been wanting to take a renunciant form in Buddhism for quite some time. Actually, the co-founder of Empty Cloud Italia, the organization that I just started here in Italy, is in fact one of these women. She's 34 and she's been trying to ordain since she was, in her late 20s. And this was just not available for her in this country. And so it's very important, I feel, to just as all the elder bhikkhunis have done for myself, actually, in the United States, to create all of these opportunities, to extend them everywhere. And this comes also through the translation to making accessible the words of the elders. Otherwise, it just kind of becomes so disconnected from the past. And too much perhaps connected with a lot of stereotypes that float around these days, a lot of ideas and a lot of, just papancha. And instead we want to be more connected with the Dhamma, both for ourselves as bhikkhunis and also for other potential women and men who actually want to follow this path and dedicate themselves fully for awakening. So it definitely is important to have texts like the Therigatha being accessible in as many versions as possible. And I'm also working on finishing the Italian version of the Therigatha, so to make it accessible also for Italian people. So that's a little bit, long story short.
Great, thank you so much. I would like to bring this meeting to a happy conclusion with my appreciation and thanks for everybody who took the opportunity to practice together with us today and to look into this other side of the practice, something that's exemplified in persons. After this, Venerable, you heard that Seminary Tavira is emerging from her seclusion time, her part of the winter retreat. And I will be going into retreat this week, so I'll see you again on the full moon day of March 25. That's a Monday, so there's going to be another special talk on Monday evening, March 25, something to do with stream entry. And in the meantime, you'll be in the very capable hands of Ayya Suvijana, who's coming over. She's been at the Hermitage for 9 weeks or 10 weeks, and she's just coming back here to take care of you. So this is all we have. We can close by giving respect to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammanusari Subhatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Dhamami. Thank you, everybody, for your patient listening.
Thank you, Ayya.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ayya.